I'm Andy Thayer, and with me tonight is Mike Lynn from the No War on Iran Coalition, and we're going to be talking about a number of things concerning possible U.S. war on Iran and what that means not just for the gay community but people in general. Mike has been probably one of a handful of people who have been the foremost promoters of the notion that the United States should not go to war against Iran. It's been very active here in Chicago. Mike, could you tell us what the No War on Iran Coalition's been up to lately?
I'd be happy to, but if I could just take a moment, first of all, to let you know an update on the hearings. We found out this afternoon they're actually going to be held in the City Council chambers.
Oh, great.
So that's also on the second floor, just down the. But what's been going on lately? Well, I think what we've seen lately is a real uptick in the threats and the saber rattling the U.S. has been engaging in against Iran. And this could, of course, just be saber rattling for the sake of intimidation, but it looks very serious. There's a lot of developments just in the last couple of months that indicate that we've taken a turn for a more serious turn. As you know, Admiral William Fallon, who was the commander of CENTCOM, which is the military unit that has jurisdiction over the Middle East, he was very vocal in his opposition to an attack on Iran. He, matter of fact, was quoted as saying there will be no attack on Iran during my watch. And he was recently relieved.
And his watch was preemptively ended.
Yes. And he is being replaced by David Petraeus, who we all know is George Bush's favorite general.
And Petraeus has been repeatedly saying, oh, the Iranians are doing this, that, or the other thing in Iraq.
Exactly.
They accuse Iran of meddling in Iraq.
Rather ironic, isn't it?
Yes. A foreign country meddling in Iraq. That's horrible, says the United States.
Yes.
But there's been more indications, unfortunately, of perhaps impending U.S. war in Iran. Could you tell us about that, Mike?
There have, following up on Petraeus and Ryan Crocker, the ambassador to Iran, after their hearings in Washington that were very highly publicized. The administration's rhetoric has gotten really belligerent. George Bush threatened that if Iran did not stop interfering in Iraq and threatening U.S. soldiers, that we would deal with them. We would take action to deal with them. And that's a significant escalation in the rhetoric. We've also seen a lot of unusual naval massing of ships in the area. We're going to have an unusually large number of aircraft carriers available for deployment or deployed in the Pacific Ocean and the Gulf that would be available to strike anywhere in the Middle East. So there's a lot of signs out there that this is stepping up and getting much more serious. So that's why we feel a certain urgency in getting the word out, and that's part of the idea of the resolution.
Well, and that's exactly it. I mean, we're under no illusions that a City of Chicago Council resolution is going to stop war. I mean, we had some of these same sort of resolutions in the run-up to the Iraq War. They don't stop the war. We're not that naive, but they do go a long ways towards publicizing the danger and hopefully getting many, many more people involved in organizing in the anti-war movement, because this is something we desperately need right now. People think that we can just wait until November and hopefully dodge the bullet then. I'd say two things to that. One, it's a long time till November. Two, the major presidential candidates, not just John McCain, but Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, have been horrible on this issue. Barack Obama, for example, threatened to bomb Iran, advocated bombing Iran a couple years ago, said he had no problem invading Pakistan. Hillary Clinton just recently came out with a quote saying that she had no problem, quote unquote, obliterating Iran. I mean, if any foreign leader or would-be leader said, I'm going to obliterate the United States, or I'm going to threaten to obliterate the United States, can you imagine the howls of protest coming out of the State Department?
And possibly war.
Yeah, absolutely. And yet, Hillary Clinton's got no problem saying that she might obliterate Iran. And where were the protests against that in Congress?
It was very quiet. You don't hear. There's been a lot of very aggressive rhetoric, a lot of very aggressive actions by Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Congress voted last year by an overwhelming majority to declare part of the Iranian military as a terrorist organization, and this is the first time in history that the U.S. has ever declared part of another country's military a terrorist organization.
Sort of a pot calling the kettle black.
Exactly, and this could provide the basis for a rationale of sorts for an invasion. If you go back to the 2002 use of force resolution, it says use of force against those sponsoring terrorist actions. If we've already labeled the Iranian military a terrorist action, then they can make a case that this is the rationale for bombing right there.
Yeah, and for those who say, well, the national intelligence estimate said, well, Iran ceased working on any kind of nuclear device way, like was it 2005 or 2003?
2003, yeah.
Unfortunately, you had some of the same sort of contrarian evidence coming out in the run-up to the Iraq War, but that still didn't prevent the United States from launching that invasion. And you've got a situation now where, yes, the Iraq War looks like it's in difficulty, shall we put it politely, from the standpoint of the United States. And even though the United States is overextended in Iraq, arguably you had the same sort of situation back in the Vietnam days before the United States launched an invasion of Laos and Cambodia. So even though it looks like the current war is spinning out of control, doesn't mean that they might not escalate it. We saw that with the Vietnam War, even though the internal estimates of the United States at the time had said the Vietnam War was lost from the standpoint of the United States government. That didn't prevent them from a horrible escalation. We've already had over 1 million Iraqis killed in the current war. The current estimates, recent book out, some $3 trillion spent on the Iraq and Afghanistan war. The thought of a new invasion against a country that's 3 times as populous as Iraq could mean those costs, both from a human standpoint and a financial standpoint, could be that much worse.
The financial cost could be almost unthinkable. Iran is a much stronger military power than Iraq was. It hasn't had as many years of sanctions that have run the military down the way Iraq had. Iran possesses some fairly sophisticated weapons. They have silkworm missiles, Chinese-made silkworm missiles. They may have Russian-made sunburn missiles. They could very easily, and they're strategically situated on the Strait of Hormuz, they could easily shut down shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, which is where 30% of the world's oil passes.
So you think $125 a barrel is...
Try 250.
Yeah. Now, one of the raps on the whole idea of having the city council take this up is, well, come on, this is a federal government thing. Well, what would you say? Why should the Chicago City Council, dealing with city budgets and so forth, why should they be concerned about something like this?
I'll give you 5.4 billion reasons why they should be concerned about this. That's what the Iraq War so far has cost the city of Chicago, $5.4 billion, which is about $105 million for every one of Chicago's 50 wards.
So every single time you're on a CTA slow zone, every time your kid comes home and says, there's 34 other kids in the classroom, every time you've got a pothole in your street, you name it.
Exactly.
There's 5.4 billion reasons already why the United States, Chicago, shouldn't be supporting the current wars, let alone a new one.
The money that Chicago has spent on the Iraq War would build something in the range of 365 new elementary schools.
Yeah.
It's astounding. It really is astounding.
Yeah.
$105 million for every ward in the city.
Yeah.
It's almost unimaginable.
And sort of makes the TIF funds look like peanuts in comparison.
Exactly. And bad as that is, I think the consequences of an attack on Iran could be even greater.
Yeah.
Not just in the direct cost, the direct military cost, but in the effect it would have on the economy overall, which, as we all know,
well, not
is
to
already
mention
pretty
the people
bad.
of Iran. I mean,
the people of Iran, they talk about about surgical strikes, but there's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way to launch surgical strikes. Iran's nuclear facilities, many of them are in very heavily populated areas. A lot of them are in Tehran, and there's no way to hit those with.
Well, and just look next door to Iraq right now. The utter devastation that's being caused by the U.S. assault on Sadr City. Thousands of people, refugees within their own city, fleeing the fighting, door-to-door combat. I mean, this isn't just U.S. soldiers who are being affected by this in terms of post-traumatic stress disorder, but thousands upon thousands of Iraqis right today. And it's amazing just how off the radar screen this brutal assault that's going on right this minute is in terms of American consciousness. Now we're talking about Iran, country 3 times as populous, not as devastated in the way that Iraq was by a first U.S. Gulf War and then 10 years of sanctions. Pretty frightening prospect.